Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 297. Tova, Noel, and Michael Thomas, the two guards that were on duty when Jeffrey Epstein died while in custody of the federal government, have had their trial moved to a later date. Now, originally, this trial was set to start on June 22nd of 2020, but then it was moved to January 4th, 2021. Now, if you remember, Montel Figgins, the lawyer in the case, had a pretty heated exchange with the judge, Annalisa Torres, about the trial date that was originally put forth, because his family had a trip scheduled to Italy. So him and the judge had a pretty heated exchange, and it was over the trial date. Well, that date of June 22nd of 2020 was then moved to January 4th, 2021. Now, is it because of the exchange between Mr. Figgins and the judge? I don't know, but the fact is they did have that exchange, and the lawyer had family obligations when the trial was originally slated, according to him. So I seen it today in the article. It was saying that the trial was originally scheduled for January 4th, but I knew that I had read something that it was earlier than that, the original trial, and it was June 22nd. So this trial has been moved now once, twice, 3 times. And I'm not too sure what the reasoning is behind it, besides the fact that obviously we have the COVID situation that they can use as an excuse to try and move things. Or could something be happening behind the scenes? Some sort of, maybe some sort of deal being made, or maybe the case is being broadened. Maybe somebody else who works for the prison systems who was there that night, like, what do you know, maybe their supervisor is also being charged. I don't know, right? Who knows what the hell's going on with the justice system, but we've seen them move this date several times already, so I'm not surprised that it gets moved once again. And I've seen some people talk about how, it's being moved for all sorts of reasons that have to do with the election and stuff like that, and I highly doubt that's occurring. I mean, maybe, but I highly doubt that that is what's behind this. Usually what's happening is there's other things happening behind the scenes. Other things are being exposed. There is new information being brought to light. One side or the other asks for more time to defend themselves. You know how it goes. We're talking about federal trials here. At this point, with all we have learned about federal trials, we should not be shocked to see things like this occur. And it's not like these folks were in jail. They've been out on a $100,000 bond. So they haven't been in jail this whole time. It's not like they were released from jail and, they're out walking the streets as some sort of menace. That's not the case. The trial was moved back for whatever reasons that the court and the defense came up with. And in our article tonight from Law and Crime, hopefully it will give us some more context as to the reasoning behind it. But if not, if we don't truly see the big picture after the article tonight and after, the first batch of information about this trial being moved coming out, then at the very least, what we will have here is more to the story to go on, right? More pieces to add to the puzzle. And it's just one of those situations with these kinds of federal cases where you never know. I mean, one thing I have learned following the few federal cases that I've followed throughout the years that have been of interest to me, and then now, especially with this case, is you never know what kind of twist or turn it's going to take. The federal judicial system is just one chaotic, crazy roller coaster. And that's just if you're observing it. I can't even imagine being charged with federal crimes and having to navigate all of this madness. So let's jump into our article from Law and Crime and see if it could add a little bit of context to the story. This article was authored by Colin Kalmbacher. Prison guards who were on duty the night Jeffrey Epstein died get trial pushed back by almost a year. And again, when we don't have any context to it, it makes you say, WTF, what's going on here? Why is this pushed back again? The third time? Now this is getting pushed back again? What is the reasoning behind it? And of course, we'll never get that from the courts, right? They'll leave it up to us to speculate. They'll leave it up to the news to speculate. And then they'll talk about, there's conspiracy theories running rampant. Well, that's because you morons aren't giving anybody any information. 2 federal corrections officers whose apparent laziness made Jeffrey Epstein's death behind bars possible last summer have had their trial pushed back to next summer. And when this all happened and these 2 were indicted for their laziness and their dereliction of duty and really for falsifying the reports, I said that how is it only these 2 who were in trouble? Now, of course, they should shoulder their responsibility, their share of the responsibility, right? But what about their boss? What about their boss's boss? Who was in charge of the whole entire operation that night? Whatever happened to the buck stops here? When I worked in the corporate world, I was a manager, and even if I was on vacation, if one of my supervisors messed up, I had to answer for it. You mean to tell me that's not the case in the Bureau of Prisons? Indicted last November, 31-year-old Tova Noel was charged with 5 counts of making false entries in official records, while 46-year-old Michael Thomas was charged with 3 counts of falsifying records. Each guard was also charged with 1 count of conspiracy. And the conspiracy charge is them working in coordination with each other to cover up their alleged crimes. Now, I think that's pretty interesting considering we're talking about conspiracy as a whole with the case in general, right? So if Michael Thomas and Tova Noel are charged with conspiracy, then Ghislaine Maxwell and whoever else gets arrested related to the criminal enterprise, they also must be charged with conspiracy, right? Originally slated for January 4th, 2021, their trial is now scheduled to begin on June 14th, 2021. Again, it was originally June 22nd, 2020, and then it was moved back after the heated discussion between Figgins and the judge, Annalise Torres, or is it Sanchez? One or the other. Anyway, after that heated debate, it was moved back to January 4th. And then now, today, we're hearing it's moved back all the way to 2021 now, June 14th. A year and a week after. Both Noel and Thomas turned down a plea bargain last November, essentially guaranteeing that they would be prosecuted over the prisoner's death, which was widely criticized as an unkept miscarriage of justice that occurred on their watch. And again, I am 100% behind them facing justice for their role in the negligence, right? And if there's more there, they were involved in something else, looking the other way, letting this man get clipped, whatever it may be, then fine, charge them. Let's have a trial and let's see what happens. But my point is, what about their bosses? How is it only them who are in trouble? Why is it always the low-hanging fruit? Why do they always go after the interchangeable parts? It's never the bigwig, right? How many bankers went to prison after the financial meltdown? Yeah, I know. None. And that's the problem. These people never go to prison. These people never go to jail. The infamous death of the notorious, wealthy, and well-connected accused child sex trafficker for the global and political elite immediately sparked conspiracies that, Epstein didn't kill himself. And again, I don't think this is some far out conspiracy, right? This isn't like flat earth or the Sasquatch or reptilians or anything like that, okay? There's a lot of shit that led up to this man's death that is unexplained and is unexplainable with the official narrative that they parroted out and thought that we were going to buy hook, line, and sinker. A lot of things that cannot be explained. The camera focused on the wrong cell and filming during the first assault, putting him in jail with Tartaglione. Look, there is just so much that does not add up. And then the icing on the cake is Barr expecting us to believe that because he saw the videos, that everything was kosher. Everything's on the up and up, and nobody should have any other questions. That's what they wanted us to believe. So, this isn't some weird, far-out conspiracy, okay? This is a serious question. This is serious negligence. This is a serious breach in security. And the public deserves answers. Noel, officially employed as a guard, and Thomas, officially employed as a materials handler, were working an overtime shift the night Epstein died. Why would a materials handler be guarding a prisoner? Oh, I know what they'll say. We overworked, we were understaffed, we didn't have enough people to cover all of the shifts. That's such bullshit. Hire more people. Train more people. You don't have an on-call board? You have a materials handler safeguarding one of the most important inmates in the federal prison system? Whose idea was that? That's criminal in itself. Whoever put that person into this shift, whoever put Thomas into this shift, they should be charged as well, at the very least. Their prisoner had reportedly attempted suicide weeks before and had recently been taken off suicide watch by prison officials at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Lower Manhattan. Now, let's hear that again and let it sink in and tell me how it makes sense. Their prisoner had reportedly attempted suicide weeks before. Okay, so he attempted suicide. Now he's on suicide watch, obviously, right? But had recently been taken off suicide watch by prison officials. If he supposedly had attempted suicide weeks before, why would you take him off suicide watch? None of it makes sense. Vafangul with your conspiracy theories. According to the indictment, Noel Thomas and at least 2 other guards failed to perform numerous jail-wide checks on the night of August 9th and early morning of August 10th, 2019. So that's interesting, right? 2 other guards. We've only heard about 1 other guard, though. So the plot thickens. In addition to that failure, prosecutors alleged Noel falsified records on over 75 separate occasions that claimed she and Thomas had completed their rounds in the jail's special housing unit between midnight and 6:30 a.m. So Tova Noel falsified records on over 75 separate occasions for 1 shift. That is an enormous amount of paperwork for a materials handler to be handling. None of this makes sense, folks, okay? Why was there a materials handler minding Jeffrey Epstein? I think that's the most important thing to come out of all of this. I think that's what people should be looking at cross-eyed, not the fact that the trial date got moved again. That's typical for federal cases, and obviously in this case especially. But the fact that we had somebody who wasn't a trained prison guard minding one of the most important prisoners in the system, now that if that doesn't ring the alarm bells, I don't know what will. As Law and Crime previously reported, in excess of 20 other corrections officers were subpoenaed by the grand jury investigating the well-connected pedophile financier's death. It is currently unknown whether any additional guards will be charged or if the unnamed guards referenced in the Noel Thomas indictment cooperated with the prosecution in exchange for leniency. Again, we don't know much, right? We only have what has been released yet. We haven't seen any other indictments so far in this case, but we do know 20 other corrections officers were subpoenaed and I'm guessing spoke under oath about what they know. So it'll be interesting as this goes down the pathway, as this continues to develop what happens. But what it looks like from where I'm sitting, and again, remember, I'm not a lawyer, right? Your average run-of-the-mill moron, that's all. But when they're moving these cases like this, usually something is making them do that, right? There's something behind it. And with all of these people who have come forward and been subpoenaed, you would think some of them are possibly working with the prosecution. And there might be other indictments coming in this case. So therefore, they're looking to move the trial to a later date. Again, speculation on my part, but Occam's razor and all. During the night, this is from the indictment, by the way, excuse me. During the night, instead of completing the required counts and rounds, Tova Noel and Michael Thomas, the defendants, were seated at the correctional officer's desk in the SHU common area, which the indictment notes is approximately 15 feet from Epstein's cell, used the computers, and moved around the SHU common area for a period of approximately 2 hours. Noel and Thomas sat at their desks without moving and appeared to have been asleep. So they were approximately 15 feet from Jeffrey Epstein, and we're to believe that they just happened to fall asleep that night when he planned to kill himself after looking for motorcycles and other things on the computer, after the cameras didn't work, after he was taken off of suicide watch after allegedly already attempting suicide. We're supposed to believe that these guards that were 15 feet from Epstein's cell saw nothing, heard nothing, know nothing. All right, okay. The indictment goes on to accuse Noel of using the computer periodically through the night, not for official duties, but to search the internet for furniture sales and benefit websites. You know, I can't even really talk too much shit about that. I know as a manager, obviously not safeguarding any prisoners, I searched for all kinds of wild shit on the computer when I was bored. But this is a different story here, right? I know most of us out there who work in a corporate environment or who work in an office have sat around and searched the internet when they were bored. But you weren't watching Jeffrey Epstein, right? That wasn't what your charge was. You weren't there to make sure these prisoners were safeguarded. These people really shouldn't have been looking for motorcycles and furniture and all that other shit, right? They should have been doing their jobs. They most definitely should face whatever penalties come their way for their dereliction of duty. But should they be the only people charged here? Should they be the only ones facing felony criminal charges? I, for one, most certainly think that other people should be held accountable as well. Public interest in the Epstein case had reached a fever pitch in the weeks leading up to his death, after he was indicted and imprisoned for allegedly running a global sex trafficking scheme that implicated numerous elites in politics, business, and the arts. Survivors of Epstein's years-long underage sex enterprise had finally held out hope that they would get their long-denied day in court after the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Miami seemingly intentionally botched their own prosecution of Epstein in 2008. And again, the writing is on the wall for the prosecutors from Florida, right? It's rather obvious that at the very least, they were negligent in how they prosecuted that original case. And at the very worst, they worked in coordination with Jeffrey Epstein's lawyers to sully the name of those girls and in turn get Jeffrey Epstein the sweetheart deal that he received. Those hopes were dashed when the high-profile prisoner was found with a noose around his neck on the morning of August 10th. As alleged, the defendants had a duty to ensure the safety and security of federal inmates in their care at the Metropolitan Correctional Center, said then U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Jeffrey Berman, in a press release. Instead, they repeatedly failed to conduct mandated checks on inmates and lied on official forms to hide their dereliction. Attorneys for the defendants have argued that their clients are being scapegoated for what was allegedly an institutional failure. And again, I agree with that 100%. The whole entire institution is corrupt from the top and corroded from the top. It needs to be fixed. It really does. What goes on in these prisons is an absolute joke. There's only 2 people charged. But for this to happen, the whole system had to fail, Montel Figgins, Thomas' lawyer, previously argued. Based on our view of the case, I believe there are outside circumstances that are impacting this prosecution, Noel's attorney, Jason Foy, said. And look, I get it, right? Who knows what sort of pressure is being put on and who is behind the scenes making moves and attempting to cover things up. You know how it goes. Some of these bosses in these correctional facilities, you know that they don't want to be held responsible for what happened here, whoever the lieutenant was and, his boss. So who knows what sort of institutional cover-up is underway. But I'll tell you this much, it does not look good for the government. It does not look good for the Bureau of Corrections, and it most assuredly does not look good for Bill Barr and his Justice Department when this sort of thing is occurring to these sort of high-profile prisoners. And then you add to the fact that the only people who are being charged are these 2 guards, and it really doesn't pass the smell test. Certainly not for me. So what I've taken from this bit of news that we got here, this whole entire situation is going to take quite a bit of time to unfold. There are a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes, it would look like, that we don't even know about. And especially in a case like this, where it has to do with the union, the corrections officers union, you know that there's not going to be much coming out into the public sphere. So we'll stay on top of it. We'll follow whatever happens here. And if new news happens to break in regards to these 2 guards who are now facing felonies, we will definitely be all over it. But I think that the biggest takeaway from me here is the fact that Thomas is a materials handler and he is guarding one of the most high-profile inmates in the whole entire system, I think is just an absolute look at how screwed up the whole entire system is. This man had no business looking out for Jeffrey Epstein's well-being inside of this prison. Trained guards should have been watching Jeffrey Epstein. And when you look at all the circumstances that surround this man's death, I don't know how you can swallow the official narrative and call people conspiracy theorists for asking questions, especially considering those who are pitching the official narrative have no answers. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. All right, everybody, have a great night, and I will be back tomorrow.